Guys, welcome to the live stream. Hopefully everybody can see me. Let me know if you guys are struggling at all to see the live stream. But welcome. Couple things, guys, to go through before we get started here, and then I'm happy to answer any questions that everybody has. First and foremost, welcome. I mean, this is the first time we've had the opportunity, I think, to do this YouTube live in this fashion. Given all the health concerns and everything going on, I hope everybody's doing well and okay. But beyond that, I think it gives you guys all a great opportunity, especially if you're out of school. If you're in the U.S. right now, I'm not sure internationally, if you guys are joining us internationally, where schools are out of school or in school. But certainly for most U.S. students, I think there's a lot of students that are out of school. And so this gives you guys a great opportunity, if you're looking on the bright side of being out of school, to be really efficient with your studying. So whether you be a junior that's looking to prepare and take the test potentially over the summer, or you're a sophomore, starting your preparation, this gives you guys a great opportunity that no other students have ever had, where you're out of school, you're a lot more efficient with your homework. Even if you're taking virtual classes right now, it's a lot more efficient than it is when you have to spend 6-7 hours at school the entire time. So it really gives you guys a good excuse to really practice and focus on this stuff. So if you guys are watching online right now, feel free to comment, just say hello. I'd love to see who's all there. And then we can get started. Another thing, guys, as we go through this and as we continue going through this, again, please don't hesitate to ask me questions. But beyond that, depending on how many students we have here, you guys can ask pretty detailed questions. I mean, obviously, if it gets into the 20, 25 numbers, last week before the official March SAT, which got canceled in most places here in the U.S., unfortunately, most places internationally as well. We had probably too many people to ask specific questions about specific tests. But if you guys have very specific questions and we only have 5-6 people on, don't be afraid. I have all the tests here in front of me. So if you guys have a test and have a specific question on that test, as long as it doesn't get too crowded here in the live class, and then we can certainly go over those. And then finally, if this goes well, if you guys like this format and like what we're doing, I'm happy to run. It doesn't have to just stop with SAT and ACT stuff. You guys know that there's an ACT class tomorrow. For those that are taking the ACT and thinking about taking both. But we can do, I'm a longtime math teacher and tutor, so we can do pre-calculus classes, algebra 2 classes, particularly as you guys have more time. Just keep me posted if there's anything that you guys want to do better, want us to do better in terms of production value. We certainly can. On Friday, that's actually this first point. For those that haven't seen the schedule yet, on Friday, we're doing an SAT, so we're going to do an SAT math lesson. Today is going to be much more, Ahmed, how are you? Today is going to be much more of an open discussion. If you guys have any questions, you can ask them certainly, and then we'll kind of go from there. So this Friday, though, we'll have an open math review, so SAT math. And I'm actually going to have the test pulled up on my iPad, similar for if you guys have seen the videos. We're going to have the live version of the iPad going, and you guys will be able to go through the questions directly with me. I've posted the links to those tests in the group or on those live chats, so you guys will be able to see those as we go. Okay, guys, any overall general questions before we get started? It says SAT math review. Again, if you guys check the schedule, you can set a reminder. This is for Friday. Friday, March 20th, I think, is the date. Okay, and then finally, a few announcements before we get into just kind of an initial lesson I want you guys to be familiar with. Any updates, we'll try to post them. If you guys follow us on Instagram, don't feel like you have to follow us. This is not me asking for your follows on Instagram. But if you guys follow us on Instagram, you guys can find, we'll be posting updates in our stories that just hope that, pretty much up-to-date information. We reach out to College Board as much as we can. So if you guys follow us at Star Tutors on Instagram, we'll have up-to-date information on the College Board. And then finally, guys, we write, I'm sure some of you guys already know this, but we write all of our own curriculum for the SAT. Now this, again, one of the things that irks me, that bothers me about, you guys listening to me talk, we're an independent company, we don't have direct affiliation with College Board. But we've seen enough tests, I've looked at enough tests, that what this book is really designed to do, it's not designed to, we don't write all of our own full tests because we don't believe in that. We think that the College Board tests are better, so continue to use those, the ones that are on Khan Academy. This is really a supplement for that. So the beauty of the book, and we put all of this content on Star U, our app, so you guys can download that. The beauty of the book is that you can do, like, let's say 15 linear equation problems, and you don't have to keep taking practice tests after practice test. And that's really what we'll talk about during the math lesson on Friday. So any overall questions? Yeah, great first one. So that's right out of the gate, perfect. Difference between the SAT and the ACT. So the biggest difference is the time. Right now, so in 2016, the SAT changed the test. So 2016, guys, in fact, let me erase all this stuff so you guys have a bigger board here. So in 2016, the SAT changed the test. 2016. The SAT changed it, so I'd say there's probably between the tests, there's maybe 80% crossover now. So there's a lot of similarities. I mean, for those that have taken a practice test for both, you know that the SAT reading section with the graphs, right, the graphs and the charts, that's designed to be similar to the ACT science. So the SAT basically in 2016 admitted that their old test wasn't nearly up to par with the current ACT, and so they made their test very similar. So the tests are pretty similar. The biggest difference is that there are 154 questions. Okay, so 154 questions on the SAT and 215 questions on the ACT, but you have to answer those in about the same amount of time. Okay, it's roughly, it's like 15 minutes, I think there's a gap, but that's 50% more questions on the ACT. The ACT questions are much easier. Obviously, you couldn't be expected to answer 50% more questions. These are much easier, and it's much faster. Much easier questions, much faster. Okay? The best way to explain it on that note is the SAT, you'll always walk out of the SAT feeling pretty good. You'll always feel pretty good about it because there's just not really a time crunch. On the ACT, we've had students that have scored really, really well and really highly, and they come out of the test and they're just like, what in the world is going on? In fact, for those that have watched our videos, Owen, our student who's now older than you guys, but who's in some of the videos, he came out of his ACT and he did really well on it, but he came out just being like, I have no idea what's going on. I don't know if I did well. I don't know if I didn't do well. And that's really because you're just answering questions so quickly that you don't really have time to stop and think. The SAT is much more analytical, particularly on the reading section. And so those are the two primary differences between the tests if you're going back and forth. I posted in our ACT, so for the schedule coming up, we'll have an ACT review tomorrow and then, again, 2 lessons on Friday. I posted practice tests for both the SAT and the ACT in the comments section of those Friday videos. So if you check out the schedule for us, or if you just go to our channel, you guys can see practice tests for both, print them out, take them, let us know what you think. But there's no question that you'll think the ACT is like, you come out of it just exhausted and kind of overwhelmed. That doesn't mean that you necessarily do poorly because the questions are so easy. So that's a great question. Great first question. Any other questions, guys, before we jump into this SAT? I'm going to talk a little bit about the SAT math section for a second. And then we'll move from there. Any general questions, guys? General questions. Okay, so if you guys have questions, you can throw them out there for me. I'm happy to answer anything. When I was your age, I'm sure that I wasn't thinking to myself that I'd be doing this for a living, thinking about the SAT and the ACT, but I've really kind of fallen in love, it's weird to say, but fallen in love with how these tests work, and really how they maximize, not necessarily what the content is, because I know that you can argue for days and days about whether or not this content is applicable to college. What really is applicable to college, guys, and what I want you to think about as we move into some of this review, is that let's say you go to Harvard, and I only use Harvard because everybody knows Harvard. I don't have to explain anything, right? Harvard is Harvard, right? And if you go to Harvard, one of the things that you don't know about, and parents tend to forget, is that when you're at Harvard, you are up against, right? The SAT and the ACT are graded on a scale, right? Both of the tests are graded on a scale. It's a national scale against all the other students in the country, okay? Same with the AP test for those that are taking APs or IB programs. When you go to Harvard, every class, for the most part, every class, particularly the big ones, is on a scale. Okay, and everybody always asks us, well, why are these tests so important for college? Well, one of the big reasons is because if you go to Harvard, Harvard has to know that at some level you're going to be able to compete, that you're not going to feel overwhelmed with the classwork because there are really, really competitive people at Harvard or MIT or wherever you guys want to go. And again, That doesn't mean everybody's going to Harvard or MIT. It's such a. I just use that because that's the one that everybody knows about. And at Harvard, you might take on a Saturday, right? Coincidentally, the SAT and the ACT are on Saturdays. On Saturday, you might take a 3-hour calculus final. Okay, you might take a 3-hour calculus final, and guess what? That class is graded against every other kid in that class. And all of those kids are on the national level, some of the smartest kids in the country. And so the reason this still is so important, and again, you guys can argue whether or not the content is important, but the reason that the overall test is still so important is because you will, if you're sitting in a 3-hour test, whether it's on math or science or whatever, math, science, reading, and you have to compete against everybody in that class on a scale, they need to know that when you sit through that 3 hours, that you're not going to be feeling overwhelmed or feeling over the top. And that's really why this test becomes so important. It's as much about the stress environment, the stressful environment, as it is about anything else. Because for better or for worse, that's what you're going to experience in college. And again, that experience in college is not just at Harvard. That's at every school in the country will have these types of finals against every other student at that college in that class. And Harvard is just a good example because everybody knows it, and it's the top whatever percent of students. And so you have to compete there, and Harvard doesn't want to admit you. In a true case to the colleges, sometimes colleges and the SAT and the ACT get a bad rap. In a great moment for those guys, they don't want you to go to a college where you just have a horrible and miserable experience. If you feel overwhelmed by it all, and the 3-hour test is overwhelming, right? You guys have to. When you sit down and take a practice test, when you guys have watched our videos or seen our videos in the past, I feel overwhelmed after taking one section. I'm older than you guys, and this test doesn't even matter, and I'm like, oh, this is tiring. If I had to jump back into it, it takes this kind of level of focus that you have to train yourself. It's so much about endurance. Okay, this whole thing is about endurance as much as it is about content. So again, guys, great question on that one. Any other questions, guys, before we jump into SAT math? Any questions about that, about college in general, about how this applies to college? And on top of that, guys, and everybody's watching that's been watching consistently, can everybody see the board? Can you guys just say good to go if you can see the board okay? Can everybody just say good to go if you see the board okay? I can use a different color marker by chance. Again, on Friday during the actual math lesson, I'll have the iPad pulled up so you can see the test. It's going to be a little bit easier. But for now, I figured we could just use the whiteboard. Okay, so beyond just general questions, guys, you guys can throw these out anytime you want. I can see your questions coming through. Let's talk about the SAT math section for a second. Let's flip it over to blue. Maybe that's easier to see. Okay. The SAT math section, a thing we're going to talk about on Friday, and I want you guys to start thinking about. You guys, for those that have watched our videos in the past, you know that I keep talking about this idea of this 3-pass method for the math section. And really what that comes down to is finding the easiest questions first. Find the easy questions first. Okay, find the easy questions first. The reason that's so important, guys. Okay, Carter, thanks for the. I'm seeing the comments come through, guys. I really appreciate the more participation we have. I know that there's a little social anxiety asking a question. The more participation we have, the better these are going to go. So please feel free to comment. Okay, find the easy questions first. And the reason I say that is because the SAT math, the SAT in general, every question is worth the same amount of points. Every question equals same points. Okay? What makes somebody great, not only at this test, but what makes you a great test taker and just in general, like the best athletes or the best scientists in the world, they're not the best scientists because they try to reach for their ceiling every day. They're the best scientists or the best athletes because they never go lower than their floor. And what they do really well, and I've studied this a lot, and I've worked with over 1,000 students now in our programs, classroom programs, our individual programs, just on these types of videos. Having seen this and having seen these kind of elite level test takers, it's all about not hitting it's not going below a floor. So what I ask of you guys, rather than thinking about this, and this comes as the easy, what I ask of you guys is not to think about the top level, because every time we work in school, we're thinking about 100%, and that's great, but that will absolutely kill you on this type of test, because on a school test, not every question is worth the same amount of points. On this test, every one is worth the same amount of points. So what happens is if you start to get overwhelmed, remember the SAT math sections happen last, right? They're the last in the order. And so what ends up happening is if you start feeling overwhelmed, like, oh man, this is too much, and you come across a really difficult question or one that just throws you for a loop, that is a trend, right, for a really quick downhill slope, right? Talking about slope, really important on the SAT math. That's a really quick downhill trend if you start feeling overwhelmed and you start feeling tired and you're stressed. So what I ask you guys to do as you start your preparation for this, or you're in the middle of it or whatever, and you guys have extra time on your hands, is set a floor. So if your goal score eventually is, let's say it's a 1500, that would be incredible, right? For those that are already at that level, congratulations, that's so great. If your goal is a 1500, I want you to set a floor for yourself at 1300 or 1400, whatever it might be, okay, where you never go below that. No matter, every time you sit down to take a test, your goal is to never go below that. So you don't have any excuse for like, oh, well, I was just tired that day. The best athletes or the best scientists or whatever you want, the best actors and actresses in the world, there's never an off day for them. They might not have everything in the tank that day. They might not give you everything they have, but they're never going to go below a certain level. Bill Gates, right? The Bill Gateses of the world, they're just so programmed to try their best, no matter whatever that best is that day. And they get every question that they possibly can that day. And then guess what? If they have a great day, then they hit their ceiling. And that day might come one out of, every 10 days for them or whatever. But the other 9, they don't let themselves go below a certain level. Everybody that's watching, that's one of the most important things that you guys can know, not only about this SAT test, but just in general. That's one of the most important things you guys can know if you're 16 or 17 years old right now. That if you study these types of people, the one thing they do better than anybody else is they never go below a certain level. They're so programmed not to go below that level. And that's what I want you guys to be thinking about on this test. That every time you practice or take a practice section, there's no excuse. So every time you're working to get a little bit better. Because if you get one question better, every question on the SAT is worth 10 points, effectively. Now again, some students we've had to argue, and that might be true. It's not exactly 10 points, but let's just say if you look at the scale, on average, every question is worth about 10 points. On the math section, it's worth a little bit more per question. On the reading section, it's worth a little bit less, but let's just say 10 points for the sake of argument, okay? If you get one question better every day, guys, so just plus one concept that you master every day, and this is, I cannot stress this enough, for the number of students that are on right now, you guys are doing yourself a great service using this time if you're out of school to help with this, because if you memorize one concept every day, just one concept every day, right? And you do that for 30 days, right? 30 days. That's 30 concepts in just 1 month. 30 concepts, 1 month. And guess what? Those 30 concepts show up, that's 30 questions. That is a plus 300 point improvement on this test. One concept. And some of the concepts come up so often, like punctuation on the writing and language section or linear equations on the math section. If you master what a line of best fit is, or you master linear equations, you have to do better. Particularly SAT, because the SAT has 3 sections, whereas the ACT has 2 sections that are less volatile. What I mean by that is the writing and language and the 2 math sections on the SAT. If you memorize every concept, it's very unlikely that you're going to do poorly or go lower than your floor. The reading section is the only one that's variable depending on the day, like your score might go up if you're more focused or not. But those other three sections, that can be 30 concepts that you memorize over the course of a month. One concept every day is probably 30 minutes of work. And if you memorize those 30 questions or those 30 concepts, there's a 300 point improvement very, very quickly. Okay, does that all make sense? Everybody that's watching, does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions on that? Any questions on that, guys? Okay, if that does make sense, if you guys feel pretty good about that stuff, I want to talk about something on the math section again that's really important. So that's just the general feel for the, right? That all is just general talk about math. But we're on Friday, we're going to spend about 30 minutes going through reviews of this concept of math-based, rules-based questions. So in the math section, there are two types of questions and only two, okay? And I mean this very broadly. There's obviously a lot of concepts that you guys have to cover. But there are rules-based questions, and there are theoretical questions. Rules-based questions and theoretical questions. Rules-based questions are very straightforward. The circle equation, okay, that is considered a hard question by the SAT standards, the circle equation. Okay, that's considered a hard question, and we'll go over that on Friday. That's considered a hard question, but it is a rules-based question. That is one that you can absolutely memorize and that you can have ready to go. So again, you know that then if a circle question comes up, you know you have it memorized. So one of the things that we talk a lot about in our classes, I'm going to switch colors here for a second, is to find the rules-based, and this is the first time I've called it this. I think the 3-pass method I've used is just find the easiest questions first. But really it's find the rules-based questions first. Okay, rules-based. Okay, one of the best ones to cover, if you guys can spend a bunch of time on any section, it's linear equations, so y equals mx plus b. If there's one section to cover, that one is just so important from a rules-based standpoint. Because y equals mx plus b is very, very easy. It's very straightforward. And rules-based, so circle equations, linear equations, factoring, right? All of those things, domain, okay, graphs of functions. All of those things are rules-based. And technically on the SAT, there's a lot of, every question is supposed to be able to solve it by rules-based. We got to write rules-based questions. But realistically, there's always let's say 5 out of 20 questions on the no calculator section, 5 out of 20, that are plugging in numbers, right? And what I mean by that is, of course, whatever is equivalent to, or if you have two positive even integers, right, and you have to add those together, that right there already is starting you off on a bad track. If you have to find two positive even integers in a row, that's starting you off on the wrong foot, because there's like a 50-50 chance that you make a simple mistake somewhere along the way just because of the way that question is worded, or really long word problems, right? And again, we're going to cover a lot of this stuff. We're going to go through the April 2019 SAT, and I posted that in the live stream. We're going to go through that, but it is just so important that you guys recognize how easy those questions can be and how you could master those very quickly. Okay, does that all make sense, guys? Can you guys just say good to go? Can everybody say if you guys are good to go with that concept? And again, we're going to come back on Friday and really try to hone in on some of these concepts, so I encourage you guys to be there. It's only going to be a 30-minute lesson, but I'm going to try to do these 30-minute lessons maybe every Monday, Wednesday, Friday until students are back in school, and hopefully give you guys an opportunity to see more questions. Any questions overall on that, guys? Who's feeling okay? Okay. Okay, so, and we can just jump into this, because if there aren't a significant number of questions here, let's jump into what I'm talking about here, okay? So in the comments section, guys, if you guys want to click the link I'm about to post, okay? If you guys want to click this link, okay? I'll bring up a question that we're going to talk about on Friday, and really what I mean by these rules-based questions, okay? Okay, you guys can open that. You just open the digital file for that. If you scroll all the way down to the math no calculator section, so scroll all the way down to the math no calculator section. As soon as you guys have that open, again, you guys just say good to go, so I know that you guys are there. Okay, but if you scroll all the way down to the math no calculator section, you guys take a look at question number 10. Okay, question number 10. On the SAT math section, the questions go in order of difficulty. So 1 through 15, let's take no calc as an example. No calc section, 1 through 15 are multiple choice questions. And theoretically, these are supposed to be in order of difficulty. And then when you get to those free response questions, those student-produced response questions, theoretically, they're supposed to be in order of difficulty as well. Now, it's not always the case. It's not perfect like that. But theoretically, that's a good way to interpret this. And so with 1 through 15, if you guys look on that April 2019 test, and again, we'll go into more depth on this on Friday, but if you look at question number 10, right, theoretically, question number 10 is like probably a level 2 or a level 3 question. Let's say level 2. Okay, this is 2 out of 3. There's 3, right? There's 3 levels on the SAT. And if you guys look at this question, right, all that they want us to do, can everybody see this? Is everybody cool with this? So it says 1 half mv squared equals mgh. So mv squared equals mgh. Guys, if you see an equation like this, and then you see in the answer choices that there's lining up one variable. In this case, it says equivalent to the velocity. Which of the following is equivalent to the velocity? All they want you to do is solve for v. And I know most of you guys know that already, that's what they want you to do. But this is a perfect example of a question as, why wouldn't we want to do this question before we started getting into questions that ask us about, again, where we have to plug in numbers and we're not entirely sure if we're doing it right, and we don't even know when we get to the end of the problem if we did it right altogether. If you look at this question, if you remember, maybe let me write this a little bit bigger here. Okay, so again, April 2019, those that are going to watch this after, we get something that looks like this, right? 1 half mv squared equals mgh, April 2019, number 10. Right? If you just remember basic rules, so let's take it as simply as we can. So we're going to multiply by 2 over 1. And again, you guys know shortcuts, I'm sure, the ones that can answer this question already, that you can divide by 1 half, all that kind of stuff. Right? But you just multiply by 2 over 1. Okay, so that cancels, and that's something that, again, that you learn in pre-algebra. Then you get mb squared equals 2mgh. Okay, now we're going to divide by m on both sides, divide by m. Well, look at that. That m cancels with that m cancels with that m. So now we're left with v squared is equal to 2gh. You square root both sides, right? All of these are just the simplest order of operations, how you solve for variables, right? V is equal to the square root of 2 times g times h. Does that all make sense, guys, how we got to the end of that? I think that's the right answer. Answer choice C. So again, the reason that I bring this up and the reason I want you guys to be familiar with this is if you guys take a look at this and when we go through this further on Friday, it's going to be so easy to answer these types of questions. And if you get 15 questions right, okay, so if you find the 15 that are very straightforward and you just work to memorize those 15, okay, 15 questions on the math section is worth, yeah, like I said, let's say 10 points. It's probably 10 to 12 points. Right, so if you get those 15 questions right, you're at 150 to 180 points on the math section already before you even have to worry about those 5 questions that were going to be theoretical or less straightforward than these ones are. Okay, does that make sense, guys? It's just so important that you guys continue to work through this stuff. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions on that overall, guys? Do you have any questions on that overall? Again, we'll go into more depth with this. We'll certainly go into more depth with this on Friday, but I just want to give you guys an example as to what the types of questions I want you to be looking out for. And if you guys can do this on both the writing and language and all of the math sections, it's very easy to figure out a study plan. If you guys ever have any questions about study plans, I'm happy to answer those as well. But it's very easy to come up with a study plan as to how you're going to find 300 more points, how you're going to improve your score by 300 points. The only section on the SAT that's volatile, that has any variability really, is the reading section. Every other section, if you do it the right way, and you're really diligent about memorizing the concepts you're going to do really well. That's just the bottom line. Okay, because all of the other sections are way less variable. You can just memorize punctuation rules. You can memorize redundancies for grammar. You can memorize questions like this. And again, that makes the test that much easier. Okay, does that all make sense, guys? Any questions overall? We're going to leave you with one last math tip here, and then we'll be done. If you guys don't have any questions, we don't have to go for the full hour. We're going to schedule these generally, guys, for about an hour. Okay? But again, if you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to just reach out. I know it's a little bit. Okay, the last thing I want to remind you guys of is you continue to take math practice tests. You take math practice tests. And this goes into the thinking of the SAT. If you look at the SAT exam, and then you look at the scale, and you have a really strong understanding of the scale, the math section of the SAT is not graded in two sections, right? Math is no calc, which has 20 questions total, right? And then the calculator section has 38 questions total. Now, I cannot prove this by any means, but there's a 58 question total, and if you guys look at the scale, you'll see that the total math score is out of 58 questions, and then it gives you a scale. Okay? If you guys look at this, the no-calc section, in my opinion, is actually easier than the calc section, but most students are less comfortable with the no-calc section simply because you guys always use your calculators. If you look at this, the no-calc section is worth only 1/3 of the overall math score, while the calculator is worth 2/3 of the overall math score. But what tends to happen is students feel so poorly or just so done with the test at this point that when they get to this point, they don't give max effort. Okay, their max effort is lacking. They just want to get out of there, right? Who's ever had that feeling? I used to have that feeling all the time in school. Never paid attention, unfortunately. I wish I would have now in hindsight. I wasn't a good student. I happened to be good at these tests for no other reason than I was pretty competitive. But other than that, I was not willing to give max effort on much, particularly when the going got tough. So if you find the easy questions, because I was lazy, this is, again, ironic, but because I was lazy and was only looking for the easy questions, I was able to maximize my score. Okay? So again, when you guys get to the calculator section of the math portion, if you're taking a practice test or a real test, don't lose sight of the fact that even if this was going really poorly, that you can make up for it because you're two times the value on the calculator section where all of these questions are worth the same amount of points. So for those that are going to watch on Friday as well, we have that 30-minute lesson. I'm also going to post here, guys, for anybody following along. I'm going to post the answers for that April 2019 test. Okay, and you guys can check out the scale yourselves, April 2019. Answers and scale. Okay, and when you see the scale, I think what you guys are going to find is that, when you guys see that scale, I think you're going to find that this all works out, that the math all works out, that there are 58 questions, and you can see how you'll lose about 10 points per question approximately. And then if you just stay focused on the calculator section, when you do feel more comfortable, you're going to do really, really well on that, and that's worth double the value of the no-calc section. Is that cool? Is that cool, guys? Okay, so again, I just wanted to, this is the first time we've ever done this SAT live stream like this. We're really excited about doing it. We're really excited about the Friday stuff and just the potential. Again, this is kind of the first time that we haven't been super busy with our students, both in Los Angeles and then working virtually with students. So, it kind of gives us an opportunity to really try to hone in on improving on the SAT, improving on the ACT, and really getting better. I promise for those that are paying attention right now and those that are watching and those that are really trying to work at it, the more efficient, because you have more time on your hands for those that are out of school, this is going to be a great opportunity to master this test. There's not nearly the, there's just not nearly the amount of work you have going on probably right now. Can't speak for everybody, but for the most part, it's probably less than what school was if you're doing school virtually right now, and that just makes a huge impact. So again, I appreciate you guys tuning in and watching this because I do think that it's going to really pay off in a big way when you guys get to the real test. Okay, any other questions, guys? Again, this is just our first lesson on Friday. Friday at 1, I think it's, what is it? Friday at 1 p.m., I think. Friday, March 20th. March 20 at 1 p.m. Okay, March 20th at 1 p.m. We'll have a full SAT math review where I'll show you kind of what I was talking about with these SAT rules-based questions versus theoretical questions. So I encourage you guys all to be ready for that. If you're not there live, you guys, of course, can watch it after. But if you guys have any questions, comments, make sure that you comment on the video. Otherwise, guys, have a great rest of your day. I hope everybody's staying healthy, and yeah, we'll see you guys on Friday. And we also have an ACT live stream tomorrow. So, yeah, we'll see you guys then. Thanks, guys. Have a great rest of your day.